Thanks for joining us at the table with Susan and Lucy. We are delighted and honored to have a very special guest with us today, our dear friend, the Honorable Constance Morella. Let me just tell you a little bit about Connie before we hear from her. Connie represented Maryland's 8th Congressional District from 1987 to 2003. That's quite a run there, friend. After that, she served as permanent representative from the U.S. to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development from 2003 to 2007. She was born Constance Albanese until she married the love of her life, Anthony Morella, and she started her life and political life and family life in Maryland. So Connie, thank you so much for being here with us today. We're very excited to have someone of your experience and stature be with us.
Thank you, Susan. It's so nice to have a seat at the table with you.
Always. You always have a seat at our table. What I'd love for us to discuss first, before we get into so many of the things that you've been involved in, is to take us a little bit back to, the Constance Albanese, who was growing up in Massachusetts, and what your family was like in those days, and how it influenced you to be who you became, this magnificent woman.
Sure. I grew up in suburban Boston, a place called Somerville, and it was a kind of like middle class area where we had single family houses, and we knew everybody who lived in the various blocks, went to a big public high school, loved the library because we didn't have the books in the house. We had to go to the library for it. And I was one of 6 children. I came as number 4, and I was the first daughter. I had a followed me. So you can imagine when you've got older brothers that they really want to kind of guide you, guide you with their misinformation, but they were very protective and very helpful. And so I emerged, and I think it was because I was a female that I had more opportunities than one would expect. I had tap dance lessons. I had aerobic class. I had a lot of the things that my mother wanted to make sure that I was engaged in.
Mm-hmm.
So my father was a cabinet maker, and he also not only made cabinets, but he made some damn good wine.
In the basement?
My mother was a flower gardener. She also did some work part-time so she could earn some extra money to give us as kids, on the side, just to make sure we had what we needed to progress as she saw it. So it was a nice kind of family growing up.
Did they speak Italian in the house? Did you speak Italian?
Oh, which they of course could speak Italian beautifully, and I would find phrases coming from them, but they purposely tried to not speak it because they wanted me to be assimilated. Well, they were right. I was not only assimilated, I ended up being an English major, and I can understand the value of that. And yet subsequent to that, I've even taken Italian lessons, and it's not as easy when you don't start off.
Absolutely. But we all have the same story. Our relatives would not teach us Italian. I always thought part of it was so they could say things behind our back that we wouldn't understand, but also because we were American, and you were supposed to, learn English. But I oftentimes wish I did learn it.
Yeah.
Over to you, Lucy. I know you're dear friends with Connie also.
Yes. So Connie, same experience, parents wanting us, they were first generation Americans, wanting us to be American. Now remember, they use that term all the time. Nevertheless, having this rich Italian heritage, I guess, first of all, I want to ask you, where did your people come from?
They came from southern Italy, Reggio Calabria. And I had an opportunity to visit there, a couple of times. Very interesting. They even had some groups called the Albanese groups. So I don't know. I think through its history, it was very close with people who lived there and their heritage. So they came over. Their families actually knew each other. My mother was very young. My father was young too, but he was a little older than my mother. Her mother had died in Italy, and my grandfather had a very adventurous brother who said, let's go to the United States. And so he went first, and then my grandfather followed him. And that's how we became part of America.
Oh,
Well,
it's a
it's
wonderful story, right? I mean, it's Susan and I have very almost the same story to tell. Calabria, Reggio
all
Calabria.
three Calabrian women right here.
Calabria.
Wow.
Watch out, right?
I mean, perseverance. Don't let them say stubbornness. It's perseverance.
Right, exactly. No
Yeah.
testadora.
Yeah.
And so coming here then, and where did they settle? Did they settle in Massachusetts?
They did. And they did. Again, this is something about Italians. I'm sure of other groups too. The whole family connections, even if people aren't related to you, that you know them. And so they had some family that settled in Massachusetts. They started off in Salem, Massachusetts, and then moved in toward Boston. And that's where I had aunts and uncles who lived nearby. So again, there was that sense of sort of security of having some family nearby. Sometimes it was a nuisance, but it,
Oh, that can be true too. And so, and and your father,
cabinet maker. Yep.
yes, cabinet maker. You know, my father was a chandelier maker.
Oh,
So they had, I think maybe the story is, Connie, that those that had skills
Yeah.
yeah.
were able to get to the United States and make it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so your parents created a middle class upbringing for you. Is that right?
Sort of, yes.
Sort of.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I want to just change. Oh, sorry, Lucy, go.
Yes. So I was just going to ask. So then I was going to ask you, um, did your and both sides of your family were from Reggio Calabria? Both your mother and your father,
Yeah.
right?
As a
Yeah.
matter of fact, Lucy, I must tell you that their marriage was an arranged marriage. In fact, my mother used to tease once in a while, and she'd say, "Well, there was another man I was dating, but I didn't have a chance to to stay with him." But it worked. But it was an arranged marriage. See, her mother was not alive, but she
Mhm.
had a father who wanted the best for her, who had a brother here and other relatives, and so it worked out. I guess it worked out fine.
Wow. She must have been a fascinating woman.
My mother was incredible, incredible. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well,
And
I'd
so,
like to just, oh, I'm sorry, Lucy, I keep cutting you off. It's the problem when we're not in the same room.
yeah, I'm turning it over to you now, Susan. My buddy.
Thank you. I just wanted to spend a little bit, Connie, if you could talk a little bit, very briefly, about what the OECD is and what it does.
I'd be happy to. It actually came about after the Second World War, and it came about because of the Marshall Plan. When George Marshall spoke at
Mhm.
Harvard, he talked about a family of nations. Can you imagine trying to help the people who were your enemies, as
Yeah.
well as those who fought in the war when you were devastated as a country yourself? But he formed this OECD. It used to be called the Organization for Economic Development, and then it'd be the Organization of Economic and Cooperative Development, OECD. And what it does is right now has 38 members. It didn't start off with 38, obviously, and they had to pass very difficult criteria to be accepted. Um, there are a number of things that they had to prove that they could do, that they were a democracy, that they had their laws in order. And what it does is it works together. And it was Thomas Friedman who wrote the book The World is Flat. Well, OECD didn't see it that way. They saw a lot of bumps, so they came in to try to flatten those bumps and to bring harmony. As an example, one of the great conventions that they were involved in was called the Anti-Bribery Convention. Came about because of our Corrupt Practices Act. And because it eventually passed throughout those countries that were members, it then did not allow uh, people and organizations to take in money from foreign companies and foreign entities. So, because you could do that in France, for instance, where OECD operated from. Incidentally, you need to know that the headquarters for OECD was Paris, France. Not bad.
Tough assignment, tough assignment.
Baby.
So actually, it works together. At the not only anti-bribery, but they had money laundering, They got involved with the climate change. So they have come up with some great propositions. And what's interesting is that, unlike our Congress, they have to work together. So in other words, it might take longer for something to pass, but you had to go back to your government and tell them how it would help, what changes they wanted, so that you could then vote for it. And another country that was against it could also find a way to do it. So I just found it to be a splendid organization which continues to work diligently, bringing people together. In fact, our newest ambassador is the former governor of Delaware. Makes sense, huh?
I wonder how that happened.
I know. So,
Wonderful.
incidentally, I know you're involved with trade. They had two entities that were involved with OECD. One was called TUAC, and that was the Trade Union Advisory Council. The other one was BIAC, the Business Industrial Advisory Council. And we, as commissioners, would meet with them periodically on the bills that they cared about. So, in other words, it gave them a voice, and that's what they really wanted.
That's very, very good to hear. And we are at the American Italian Food Coalition
Yes.
care very much about international trade and knowing that the world is filled with good trading partners. So you saw firsthand, not only as the ambassador, but also in Congress, how important trade is. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, I just could very simply say, you buy an automobile. Hey, is it an American automobile? Forget it. Those parts in that automobile came from all these countries that gave what they could do well into the product. So there is nothing that is separate and indivisible. So trade is imperative. And if you want to get some important elements within the philosophy or concept, you have to share, you have to try to work it out. And so trade, I think we all know how important trade is. We just need to push it even more.
What was it like? Describe a little bit for us the inside scoop or the bird's eye view between the amazing bilateral relationship that we've had between the United States and Italy.
Well, I think it's the relationship. The relationship comes from way back. It's one that I have always flaunted because I just think that the greatness of the United States has a great deal to do from what we have garnered, gathered, invited from what has been done in Italy. I mean, when I think of, I'm still trying to get Constantine Brumidi as a stamp, because he designed the Capitol. But when you see the philosophers, those who are involved in literature, the architects, the architecture, the strategic concepts, even in wars, then you think, well, what a great country from which this happened. And so, and obviously, because of my blood, I feel I'm more open to what's happening, and I'm just very proud of it. I was on the board for many years while I was in Congress, and then a little after that of the National Italian American Foundation. And now I'm with the National Organization of Italian American Women. And then my husband, it was part of the Lido Club, which was and they gave me an award. So I'd still stay involved with what's happening in the hopes of fostering that relationship.
And of course, everyone loves Italian food.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tell me, your relationship with Italian food. Did you learn to cook Italian food?
Well, I tell you, a while ago, I was being honored when my husband was alive, and my son, Paul, who's an actor, he was introducing me, and he said, my mother loves to travel. And she said to my father, take me someplace I've never been before. And he took her by the hand and brought her into the kitchen. So I say that's really my forte in the kitchen. I do a lot of ordering out, and the kids bring things over. No, I've always marveled, and of course, as a kid, I'd be involved with some of the baking that was done, and they would even make pasta, and they did a lot of things. My mother spent a lot of time in the kitchen and even gave food to her sister who lived in the area, and others too. But me, no chef, but I appreciate good food. I will foster good food.
Do you have a favorite Italian food?
Oh, well, I love, because I love gnocchi, and I love eggplant parmesan. I like that very much. But and I really like all kinds of pasta. But when I was growing up, I remember Friday nights, I was a little hesitant because we would have pasta e fagioli, beans and pasta. That was the Friday night kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then there was some other foods we had too that I wasn't. Oh, polenta. I mean, my God, polenta is popular now. But for me, it was peasant food when I was growing up. And so we find that there are some changes, and there are some appetites looking back with greater merit at some of the things that we discarded. Yeah. So I love Italian food. Yeah.
Yes, it's absolutely true that the food, everyday food of Italian families from the North and the South has made its way into this country, and in the most expensive restaurants serve this food. And I look at it and I go, well, that's just pasta fagioli.
Exactly. The same thing, Lucy.
Right.
Yes.
But food is great. It brings us together, and I want to congratulate you and the ATF, American Italian Food Coalition. Yeah,
Yeah.
for what you're doing and promoting it. Food brings us together.
Yeah.
Food can help a treaty get signed.
Especially Italian food, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right, Susan.
Italian food. Yep. Well, listen, we want to thank you. I guess, we just appreciate all your years of service and friendship. I know Lucy joins me and she will say her own, but you are one of the most elegant and gracious individuals I've ever had the honor of serving with. And I miss seeing you every day.
Oh, I miss seeing you too, Susan, and I'm very proud of you. Lucy, I remember meeting you, our baseball gal. My gosh. And it's so nice to have you both involved on the board, of the ATF, AIF coalition. Yeah. Thank you very much for.
Thank you for saying that.
honor.
We love you very much. And I enjoyed all of our years together traveling. I'd always get mistaken for you, and I loved every minute of it. But now I understand the Reggio girls, right?
Right.
Of course, that's right. Exactly. They should do a movie on that. Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
If you need anything else, just let me know.
Thank you so much. And thanks for joining us at the table. It was a pleasure, and we'd love to have you back again.